Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
My name is Marc Watson. I'm a genre fiction author, primarily fantasy and science fiction. I am from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I've been in the writing game professionally since February of 2016. I've got 4 published books. They include Death Dresses Poorly, Between Conversations, Tales from the World of Ryu Jin, Catching Hell Part 1, Journey, and Catching Hell Part 2, Destination, which just launched this last May as the remastered rework with Fluky Fiction. And I am here to talk about that re-release, that shiny getting it back into your hands. And I'm going to start off with a reading from the prologue called Cutting Away a Piece of a Whole. And here we go. There was once a beautiful tower here. It rose from the flowery meadow and stretched so high into the sky, some swore that it had no end, a creation of the ancient, powerful ones. They were wrong, of course. It had an end. And at that precarious top was a room of solitude where the sprightly entity known as Crystal Kokuo had sequestered herself for more than 800 years, seeking a place of peace and zen in order to find an answer to the question her beloved father had given to her. How can mankind maintain and serve the balance? After her lover, Ryu, had finally passed away by playing chicken with death and actually winning, she had seen the true extent that humans were capable of reaching. She had seen embracers reach unimaginable levels of power, be it for evil or good, and all the time she had been assured that in the end, everyone still dies. Death had been the great equalizer. It was the balance keeper in all the universes. But then Ryu had played the game against the dark stranger, and death miscalculated both her lover's power and his resolve to end things, regardless of the consequences. Yes, Ryu was still dead, after all was said and done, but it was on his terms. Reasons didn't matter to someone so determined. She remembered that day so well. She had been in her haven at the time, not in the tower that existed in the real world. Her haven was her most perfect place in the world. It was so close to where she had been raised and loved so purely by her mother and father, where she had been taught to be a warrior in service of the balance. Her haven was also an unwitting protective shield against the horror Ryu had created with that gross and destructive wave of power that erupted from his mind. The wave of unbridled power swept the world, and suddenly the rules didn't apply. A man, a human man, had become more powerful than the governing forces of the universe. He had battled death, and death had flinched in the most spectacular way. The lives it cost were immeasurable. If not for the dumb luck of being in her haven at the time, she had no doubt that she, his oldest friend and most trusted confidant through the ages, would have been one of them. After that point, when her period of mourning was over and every tear she'd ever cried was multiplied 1,000 times, she returned to the tower to feel the real world for what it was, hide herself from her feelings, and shield everyone from her power. After all, with the death of the original Ryu Jin, wasn't she now the most powerful embracer that there was? Although Ryu's son may argue that point, she knew that she could very well become a threat to everything she loved. Eventually, she was simply alone in the sky. For centuries, she sat, wondering about life, love, and everything in the universe. She never feigned herself smart enough to figure it out on her own, but she knew that she was the best candidate left alive in the whole world to try. She focused the power more and more. She listened frequently to the omnis, determining the waves Ryu had made and how far they stretched. She was shocked to learn just how much damage he'd done. With the omnis, the everything, came the est vacus, the emptiness and nothing. That was a truth no embracer could escape when they reached her level. At first, she fought it. She tried to shield herself from its awesome nothingness, but she failed, damaging her psyche to the point where it took days of agony to recover. Then she attempted to understand it, but willingly accept it into her mind and spirit was incredibly costly. At times, it felt as if it was trying to consume her from the inside out, which it likely was. She was so full of the power and the glory of the omnis that she was particularly susceptible to the pain that the est vacus caused. And then the epiphany struck her like a kick to the gut. She was being ravaged by the est vacus, and yet she was still whole. Her voyages into trying to understand and balance the est vacus in her life were failures, but she was still successful in dancing close to it and coming out on the other side. Slowly, methodically, the plan formed. The way to find the balance she needed. Within her was the strength to make it happen. It wasn't going to be easy, and the attempt may kill her. But she could no longer sit in the tower and await another force like Ryu to arise. She would either stop it, or she would be dead and leave the fate of the world on its path. With more focus and strengthening, she began the journey into the depths of the warring factions of the universe. Using what she had learned with the countless years studying them, she became powerful enough to graze just enough of both the omnis and the est vacus to get what she needed. An encapsulated, microscopic hint of the nothing, bent to her will by her strength with the omnis and the power. Within her hand, the war was fought, and so long as this fraction of a particle was warring with the omnis around it, it didn't dissipate, or worse, react with the real world and suck a piece of it away. Bit by bit, it came together. Soon, it was almost visible to the naked eye, a shimmering, translucent pocket of non-reality. Eventually, after years and years of work and personal sacrifice, she felt it happen. The thin, imperceptible slice of the est vacus she had stabilized in the world coalesced and became encapsulated. She no longer had to fight to keep it from imploding. It had balanced itself against the omnis that naturally occurred in the world so that she could finally breathe. She dreaded to think what she looked like after all this work, or what happened to her if she didn't have the power in such large amounts to shut out the maddening feeling the hint the est vacus would cause if she was to look at it. Buoyed by her unprecedented success at the task that she doubted even Ryu could have completed, she used her new skills with the power to mold the omnis at war around the infinitesimal est vacus into the only logical shape she could. The universe was cyclical, and she had her plan. The long, thin blade of shimmering nothing took shape. From the sacrifice of an ancient item of focus, she was able to craft a handle that could manipulate the est vacus like the weapon it was. When it sliced, the outer everything forced aside whatever it came in contact with, exposing the nothing inside. When she met something real, it would eliminate it. In essence, she had created a handheld portal into the worst kind of hell anyone could imagine. Doing something like this willingly was almost certainly a sign of madness, but she still felt sane in her resolve. Her father's voice echoed over and over, "We serve the balance." So with the tower gone, save for a few reminders of her time there, an aged brick in a circle on the ground, she set out with the weapon she'd made. She knew full well who was going to get it. There was never a doubt. All things were cyclical, and that was important. What was important was not the enemy she needed to find, but the champion that she needed to make.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm so excited you guys are joining me today. I am DC. I have an amazing guest, so I hope you guys enjoy the reading as much as I do because I can't wait to get started. If you're new to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. You don't want to miss an episode. We are available on all major podcasting stations. You can pick them up on my website or even on Facebook. So make sure you don't miss an episode so you can always stay in touch with all these amazing authors. If you're interested in supporting the podcast a little more, and watching the unedited videos of what we do, make sure you go ahead, click on the link, and enjoy and sign up for the Patreon community. We're still growing. We still need your support. We'd love to have you. And because you guys are here to talk about the new author that I have on the show, let's get started. Hello, Mr. Mark. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you doing?
I am fabulous. I am so excited about this. Love your introduction. I have so many questions. So we're going to start with the book and then go from there. So let's get back to this relaunching of this book. I need to know, what is this book about? And what made you decide we need to do this again? So talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is the second part of a duology. So there's only the two. I'm not asking you to sign up for 10 books here to try and get the full story. And it is the story of Aryu, the young man with wings, and his best friend, Johan. The two of them were separated in the first book from a cataclysmic event to their home. It's not too much of a spoiler. It happens right in the first chapter. And they are separated, and Aryu is taken into the world of magic and the mysteries of this magical world. And Johan is taken into the world of the robotic and the futuristic because their home had been destroyed by a robotic army that, at this point, both of those things were the magic and the machines were something that they had been raised to fear. So they must go into the world and go on their adventures within it. So that was the brief synopsis of part one. And in part two, Destination, it is them having lived in those worlds for a little while and slowly trying to bring themselves back together. They are attempting to reunite and bring the things that they have learned and fight back against their enemy and get revenge and stop them from creating any more destruction. So if the first part is my Fellowship of the Rings kind of thing, where they go out and they find their people, in part two, I went straight to the Battle of Pelennor Field, and it is very much a book full of that climax. As for why I wanted to have it remastered, what had originally happened was I had this book. It was the first one that I had written. It started off as one book. I had split it into two, and I did briefly have it published by a small publisher, and I wasn't completely happy with the way that it had come together. I was proud of myself for having it done, and part two was certainly better than part one. But in that brief window when it was available, I realized a lot of mistakes that I had made. Not so much writing mistakes. I make those all the time. But I mean, navigating that world, I had made some mistakes. The world of publishing and the world of finding the right publisher for it. So when that publisher actually went under, and they said, well, we're actually selling our imprint to somebody else, and we're going to slide all of our books sideways, so you'll be fine. I wasn't happy at all with the publisher that they were moving on to. They were publishing some things that I didn't necessarily agree with and I didn't want to be associated with. I realized that I shouldn't take the easy way out and just slough it off. I had a chance to make a stand, and thankfully, the publisher of my first book, Death Dresses Poorly, stepped up and said, we still really like this, and we think that there's a lot of potential to get it back out into the world. And we'd like to give it a fresh coat of paint and give it our edit and work with you on that. And then that's exactly what we did. So we released Catching Hell Part 1 Journey, the remaster, in 2021. And then this one came out in May of 2023. And it's been such a better experience. And I am so happy that I have found them and that I get the opportunity to work with them.
You have expressed so many of the concerns and issues that I think every author has. Like, oh my God, I have this book, I published this book, and the publisher went under. I'm extremely happy for you that you were able to get your book back and not just get sold to somebody else that you might never see your content. So that's a blessing in itself. And also that you have an opportunity to work with a team that understands you and likes you, and then you're happy with this product. I think sometimes as creators, we tend to be like, I just want this book out and I'll do whatever it takes. And then it comes out, you're like, that's not the book I was hoping to have out. So I am loving it. I want to know about what got you started on this story, because it has so many different elements. And you got different pieces. You got the magic, you got the robots, you got the science fiction meets fantasy all smashed in together. But why? What made you decide I need to write this story?
I think the answer to that is the fact that I wasn't seeing a lot of stories like this out in the world. There are certainly some, and I'm not going to say that I'm treading new ground here. I'm an author who is very firmly embracing the tropes of this particular genre or series of genres. I love the tropes. Bring on the tropes. The more tropes, the better, because we love them for a reason. They're entertaining to read. They're stories that we like to hear. And a lot of my inspiration was this kind of thing. It was futuristic, apocalyptic magic. There in this world, this Ryujian world, as I've called it, in the history of the world, it's been destroyed at least 3 times. And each time mankind keeps bouncing back and learning more messages. Like we're talking thousands and thousands of years in the future, and we keep making mistakes and we keep barely scraping past them. I wanted to try and tell that kind of story with my kind of characters, the kind of characters that I enjoy writing, the ones that I would want to read about, which is how I do most of my writing, honestly. It's just kind of, I for so long would read a lot of things or watch a lot of things, and I wouldn't get to see those kinds of characters. I wanted to see, yeah, there's characters with shades of gray, but not in these kinds of worlds that I had seen very much. And so I embraced it. Much like the tropes, I embraced it, the desire to see those things and bring it out into the world.
I love that you went with your heart and said, okay, I want this. And the reality is, if you want it, other people want it. So it's a need that needed to be met. So it's absolutely fabulous. We're going to switch a little gear about you because you made a description about yourself that caught me off guard. I was like, you're an anti-author? What does that mean? I need to know because I'm like, fill me in because I'm like, what am I missing? What's going on here?
One part of it is not very clever personal marketing. But a more accurate thing is to say that when I first started becoming a quote unquote professional author, so we're going back to February 2016 here, I had done writing before that, but that was the time when I really decided to embrace this world and put myself out into it and actually accept the fact that I'm a writer and I have something to say and people might want to see it. So I would go to conferences and I would get into different message boards and I would just talk to my contemporaries. And bit by bit, I started to realize that my methods and my end goal for this entire journey is somewhat different than just about every other author that I was speaking to. There were some that shared some aspects of it, but I never really met anybody who was the same. And those kinds of things are, I only write when I want to. I don't believe in writing goals. I think NaNoWriMo and similar things are, for me at least, damaging and not something that I particularly embrace, but recognize the fact that other people need those prompts and whatnot to drive forward. I don't read. I very rarely read at all. Last year, I think I challenged myself to read 5 books just to get myself back in a reading zone. I think I finished the last one in Christmas break, like at the end of the year, just to try and slide it through. And we're not even talking big books. I am a busy person. I have 2 active kids. I have a full-time job that I love. I am a happily married man, and I love to cook and help just do all of the regular house stuff with my wife. I don't have time for that. If I have time to read, then that means I have time to write. I never write at home. I am terrible at writing at home because if I'm at home, there's a million other distractions. I am blessed enough to have a full-time job that recognizes that I do this for fun and I work with a fantastic team. And so every day at lunch, I'll eat my lunch and that is my writing time if I have anything to say. And a lot of times I don't have anything to say. Maybe I'm doing other writing like stuff, or I'm watching YouTube videos and just taking my mind away from something. And I don't really want to write. As an example, through like COVID, I wrote about 5,000 words and they sucked and they were terrible and I didn't like them. So that was 2.5 years where I did nothing and I was perfectly okay with that. I've described this kind of loosey-goosey, it's a serious hobby, but if it all ended tomorrow, it's not the end of the world to some people. And some people are really kind of receptive to it. And others, I wish I could say that I was lying about this, but others have like been angry about it. They've kind of fought back about it. I remember in the first writers conference that I went to, there was a group of writers and 1 or 2 in particular that just laid into me, just saying, it's good that I had found my particular niche, but I'm likely never going to be successful with it. What is the gist? I'm summarizing like a 10-minute rant into something. And at first I thought that was very strange. And then I realized that that was just their writing truth. And I had to kind of massage my message a little bit. And that's where that whole kind of anti-author thing came from. I never want to do this full time. I never want to retire and have the cabin in the woods where I'm writing next to a fire with a glass of whiskey. I've mentioned this before in places, but that I cannot imagine myself being there. If I'm in a cabin in the woods somewhere, then I better be out fishing or hiking or doing something else. I'm not going to be writing. And that's kind of what I mean by being anti-author. Like, obviously I'm an author and I like to get my stuff out there and I treat it seriously. I'm not just kind of half-assing this. But as I said, if it all ended tomorrow, I had a good run and there's a million other things that I look forward to doing.
So, Mark, my heart goes out to you in so many different ways because you touch in so much stuff that I'm like, wait, what? At the end of the day, I think we have become so used to having very stereotypes of who we're supposed to be an author and what authors are supposed to be and what authors put on themselves and others. So let's be honest. I'm so excited that you found who you are in this field, that you are very comfortable in what you like and you don't like. I have met too many authors who are still trying to define that and are miserable because they spend 90% of the time competing with other people. They haven't defined what success means to them. And the definition of success is, did you wrote an amazing book that you're excited about and you're sharing with the world? Does everything else have to be part of that success? And I think people forget. So as a fellow author, I'm going, amen to you. I love it. It's amazing how much more fun you have because just talking to you in the last 10 minutes is so refreshing because you love your book. You're excited about it. You have a great way of presenting. By the way, definitely do the narrations. And you're happy. You're not miserable trying to have people go buy my book. So as an author, sometimes I think we get a little bit lost in what the definition of society. So thank you for doing it because I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
With your whole entire thing on NaNoWriMo, it scares the hell out of me. It's too much pressure.
It is. It is a lot of pressure, especially for a young writer or just a writer getting into this game. You see something like that and you get so excited because there's so much support around it. There's the website and there's all the different social media groups and prompts and such that you can get into, and everybody's really encouraging to one another. It's fantastic. 50,000 words. For those that don't know, it's a 50,000 word writing goal that comes around every November. And it's just a way for this community to kind of push itself forward and say, hey, if you haven't written something, get out there and write and we'll all support you and you can track it and you can. 50,000 is a lot. 50,000 is daunting. And so 50,000 words in 30 days, because there's only 30 in November. Okay, so you got to write more than 1,000 words a day. Well, that's great, but every day is different. And your scenario is not the same scenario as the people that we're seeing on social media. Maybe they're full-time writers and they have that luxury, whereas you are like me and you're working a 9 to 5 and you've got all these other things going on. If I attempted to try and write 1,000 words a day, I would drive myself insane just because I would be having to do something like write from home, which I don't want to do, or I would have to take time off from my actual job that as I've said, I quite enjoy. So I miss a day. So now I got to write, what do I have to write 2,000 the next day or spread it out over the next one? Or maybe I miss a week for something or something. Life just kind of happens. And those are the kinds of stresses. Admittedly, writing is an art and artists are all different and they come in all shapes and colors. And for some, they need that pressure, that drive they need that inner conflict in order to put down something that they are particularly proud of. I am not that person. And I don't think that there are a whole lot of people who are cut from that kind of masochistic cloth. It's a message that I've always wanted to try and get out there, that you're not alone. Like, if you want to write one word a day, write one word a day. Just make it the best word you possibly can. A forced word to write is a forced word to read in a lot of instances. And that's not what you're looking for. You want something that you're going to be proud of and that your fan base, be it large or small, is also going to be proud of.
Your message is so powerful because to me is Tara to have to do something when I don't feel like it. I'm very much like you. I'm a binge writer. I'm going to write nonstop and then I might not write for a couple of months. And that drives people insane. They're like, you doing what? I'm like, this is what floats my boat and it makes me happy. Those stories flow, and when they don't, it's okay. So let's get back to your books. What else have you decided? You got 4 books out. You're remastering this. This duology is complete. It is out for everyone to enjoy. Mm-hmm. What is going through your mind that you're like, I want to play with this next?
Well, I've actually completed 2 other books that are not out in the world right now. So one of them I can't reveal too much about, but it is in the hands of my publisher right now. It's kind of up to them. They're looking at their schedule. They're seeing if it's something that they would like to release. And so I'm kind of waiting on that. And I have also finished a much longer, much beefier, pure science fiction story. So I never really wrote even in my youth, very much science fiction. I was always kind of fantasy-esque, but I had the story in my mind, and kind of as it goes, I started writing and just kind of ended up writing, what did it end up being? About 160,000 words or so, a reasonable sized science fiction story. And I look forward to trying to get that out. I don't believe that it's necessarily something that my existing publisher would want to bring on. It's not really in the kind of vein of what it is that they like. If they do, great, but that's not how I'm approaching this. I'm very much approaching this as I've got something new and I'm kind of going back to scratch, something I haven't done since 2016, 2017, back in when I first started really kind of querying and starting to learn about this world. So yeah, I've got those two kind of there. One is completed and the other one needs a serious self-edit. And then after that, I think it's about time I went back into the Ryujin world. It's been a while since I've written in it. Obviously, I've got this book, Catching Hell, and the remaster, but a little inside baseball is that I wrote that I started writing it, I believe, in 2011, and it took me about 5 years. It took me 1 year to write it, and then about 4 years of editing it, putting it away, and editing it, putting it away, and hating it, and loving it, and editing it, and putting it away. And then it finally got back out there. That's just kind of the process of some writers. And the total duology is 250,000 words. So writing that in a year, 45 minutes a day-ish is, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I want to get back into that world and kind of get back into that rhythm and experience those characters again, because it's been a long time since I've been there, and I look forward to going back.
Once again, I so enjoyed your passion for your characters and for your worlds. And the fact that you very much come to us like, let me go back and hang out with my people. I love it. I'm so excited. One of the things you mentioned is you're looking at starting this new book, straight science fiction, but you have the attitude of a beginner. You're like, I'm just going to try it, see who wants it, see what's out there. How do you actually, for a new author, help them to understand that that attitude is so healthy for them?
It's true. And it is something that I try to impart on young authors or authors who are just starting out. I like to try and say that when I first got started, in 2016, I was 36 years old. So I already had the kids, I already had the wife, I already had the mortgage and the cars and all the rest of it. I was living that very stereotypical life and loving it. But the kind of shine of the fresh-faced youth author Marc had long since faded. And it's just a message that I wanted to try and to constantly get out, that it's okay. If there was only one book written on how to do this, much like raising a child, it would be easy. But there's not. There's a million different books on how to be a successful author, and they won't all speak to you. And I want to make sure that those authors who are just getting started, who are intimidated by this world and this process, don't be, because we are living in a boom time for things like publishing and getting yourself out there. This is not 1978, 1979 anymore, when there was only a handful of publishers and you had to work hard to get in the door. There are so many different avenues that you can pursue. There are so many different routes that you can take. I've gone the self-publishing route. One of my books is fully self-published because I knew deep down in my heart, I'd hold it in my hands and I'd say, even the most unique of publishers isn't going to pick this up. This is very specific to me, and it's a journey that I wanted to go on myself. And as you say, with this new book, when the time comes and I'm ready to try and get it out there in the world, maybe it gets rejected 100,000 times. If you get any rejections at all, this is something that I've also preached to young writers who are just getting out there and that I talk to, who are just like, how do you deal with rejections? I'm just like, I'm happy when I get a rejection, because if I go out and I query and I send, let's say 100 different queries and such to be it a publisher or agents or that kind of thing, I maybe would get a 20% return on actually somebody saying, sorry, we're not interested. I'm happy when I get those, because it tells me that somebody actually took a look at it and cared. That nobody prepared me for the apathy that is out there, where you are just waiting for a response that never comes. You need to kind of tackle this entire world with that laissez-faire attitude. You could treat it seriously. I'd like to think that I do my part in treating it seriously, but this is not the end all be all. It will not make or break you if you get that rejection letter from that publisher that you really wanted to get on with. There is so many paths forward that you can take, and you just got to be able to see those. And that's always what I'm trying to impart upon anybody who's just getting into this, who starts off where I did back in February 2016.
That is such a beautiful message. And to our listeners, you want to make sure to take that to heart. You can do serious work without taking yourself seriously. I think Liz Gilbert said that is my favorite phrase ever. So, dear, before you leave us, because we're coming to the end of our program, I want to make sure, where can our listeners find you, where they can learn more about your books? Tell us.
Absolutely. So I do have a website. It is marcwatson.ca. So that's MarcWatson.ca. I update it infrequently. However, there is still a lot of information on there, and media and previous things that I've done, and a blog that I also update infrequently. But that is a great place to find me. And then I am on pretty much all the social medias. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Hive, TikTok, YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel with some very crudely shot how to write videos, and all of these are under @WriteWatson, so @WriteWatson. And you can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MarcWroteABook, all one word, and Mark with a C.
Awesome, dear. So let's do our lightning round before you leave, and let's see how you do with these.
All right.
Easy peasy. Water or soda?
Water.
Okay. Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Wizard or pirate?
Pirate.
Nice.
Yeah.
Desktop or laptop?
Laptop. Yeah.
Here's a little different. Let's see how you do with this one. One food that best describes you?
Spicy beef fajita.
Nice. It didn't take you long. That was really good.
Well, it's also my favorite food, and I think that it encapsulates a lot of who I am in a foodstuff.
Do tell how.
Well, for one thing, I love beef properly prepared, and it is an arrangement of different flavors. And when it's done properly, when it's not just kind of slapped together at your local Tex-Mex restaurant, when it's done properly, it can be spicy, it can be sweet, it can be rich, and you can get the right cheeses in there. It is a combination of all of these different things, the things that are soft and things that are crunchy and things that are all these different flavors. And then they're just all served on a plate and wrapped together into the deliciousness that is a spicy beef fajita. And as strange as it sounds, that's very much me. I am all those things. I am salty and spicy and sweet and crunchy and soft. I'm so soft, and all wrapped into one delicious homemade Marc tortilla.
Aw, Mr. Marc, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on all your releases. We'd like to have you back when the next books come out, because I want to know the journey. I want to know what you're doing. I want to know more insights. So have an amazing day. Do you have any closing remarks?
Not at all. Just thank you very much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. To our listeners, go ahead, pick up these books, pick up this duology. Check out his site. You want to make sure you stay in touch. Remember, if you're new to the show, go ahead, subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. And we'll be back next week with another amazing author. Bye, guys.